What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. So I want to talk a little bit about what's going on when it comes to 2022. So I talked a little bit about this in a previous video, and we really need to start focusing on 2022 because 2022, it's an election year. Okay, we've already started election season. So politicians are going to start coming out. They're going to start coming out with different proposals. You're going to have candidates. You're going to have candidates running for the first time. They're going to be out there talking about their different plan for the American people. So you're going to have a lot of different politicians coming out with a lot of different things. Now, the hope is that we can get something done when it comes to Build Back Better. That's one plan that's out there. The hope is also that some of these other issues, and that's what we're really going to focus on today, some of the other things that we know that's been talked about before, talked about during an election year. Now that we're in an election year, we're probably going to hear those things being talked about again. What are politicians going to do about it? That's what we really need to focus on. And you know I'm here. I do daily videos. I talk about public policy. And so I will be letting you guys know exactly what's going on with these politicians and what their plan is to move forward. Because it's one thing just to talk about things, but actually showing some action and moving forward, that's what we need to focus on. I will address stimulus checks because I've had people ask me that too. Will we see a stimulus check in 2022? Obviously, at this point, it's up in the air. We don't know what's going on when it comes to what the politicians want to do and how they want to move. We do know that politicians still are not talking about stimulus checks. And until they start talking about stimulus checks, we're probably looking at a situation where it's unlikely that we'll see one in 2022. Now, there are a lot of different variables that are at play here. We were looking at Omicron. We're looking at all these different things that are going on. And if our country continues to shut down at the same pace, well, we might be in a situation where our economy will start suffering. And so if that is the case, then we could see something used to stimulate the economy. Okay, now I'm not saying stimulus checks specifically, but I'm just saying we might see some stimulus come into our economy. So we'll have to just follow that. But I want to focus on some key things here. And we will, like I said, we will talk about stimulus checks. I think that's something that's out there. Also, I think that stimulus checks, I think they need to revamp the whole branding of stimulus checks. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But first off, on this channel, we talk about financial news and more. If that sounds like something interesting to you, please subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell notification. That way you'll get notified anytime we put out a video. And like always, if you see my name and a picture of me in the comment section, make sure you also see a check mark next to my name. That check mark signifies that it's me. If you do not see that check mark, it's not me. It's someone trying to impersonate me. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what we're looking at when it comes to 2022. So we know Build Back Better, the way that Build Back Better was left, they're going to have to bring that back. They're going to have to talk about it because it was a huge failure for President Biden. He did not get that through in 2021. So the talk is they're really going to try to push for it in 2022. Obviously, we know we have Senator Manchin, Senator Sinema. Those are two senators that are holding out right now when it comes to Build Back Better. So we'll have to see what they do when it comes to this whole bill. Now, parts of the bill, I think, need to be talked about as well, because if they can't get this Build Back Better bill as one piece, there are certain things that they're definitely going to have to address in 2022. So if you can't get the child tax credit in Build Back Better, if you can't get Medicare Expansion in Build Back Better, lowering prescription medication in Build Back Better, you're going to have to go it alone. And I think certain bills have the power on their own to be a bill that can get passed. Okay, so the child tax credit, I think, has enough power to do that. I think that Medicare expansion and lowering prescription drugs, I think those things have power on their own. And so we'll have to see if they do a piecemeal bill with those and do them by themselves and put that on the Senate floor and see what senators are going to vote against it. It's going to be very hard for a senator, even a Republican senator, to vote against that during an election year if they're running for re-election. Now, we know when it comes to the Senate, only a third of the Senate is going to be running for re-election. So that means that not all of them will be okay with moving forward with some of these piecemeal bills. However, that third, they're really going to be focused on, okay, I need this. I really need this, so I can't vote against certain bills. And all you really need when it comes down to it, if you get all the Democrats to vote for something, you only need a very small number of Republican senators to vote for a bill in order for it to go somewhere. So let's talk about some of these bills. So the child tax credit. We know that the child tax credit was in Build Back Better in the House's version. Now, Senator Manchin continues to say that he's not against the child tax credit. He just wants it to be more targeted. He doesn't want the money. And this is sources are saying that he had a discussion with Democrats and he said he doesn't want the money to go to drugs and to hunting. So those were his concerns. He didn't want his constituents using that money to buy drugs and to go hunting. So that's where Senator Manchin is. At least that's where we think he is when it comes to child tax credit. He's not saying that he's against it. He's just saying it needs to be more targeted. But if they can't get this Build Back Better bill through, the child tax credit is something that I think will have enough power on its own for them to bring that to the floor, bring it to the House, vote on it, bring it to the Senate, and see what senators will vote against a tax credit for the American families. I mean, that's what it comes down to. You're going to have some Republicans that are going to vote against it, but some of those Republicans, as I stated, that are running for re-election, it's going to be very, very hard for them to vote against it. So we'll have to see what they do with that. Medicare expansion, that's another issue. We're looking at Medicare expansion right now, Build Back Better. It's only going to cover hearing. So originally they wanted to have an expansion in Medicare to include dental, vision, and hearing. Now that they only have hearing in Build Back Better, they want to focus on vision and dental. And so if Medicare expansion does not find its way in Build Back Better, or Build Back Better doesn't even go anywhere, Medicare expansion, I think, is one of those other things that has power on its own. I think that this could be a bill that they could pass separately. Okay, I think they send it to the House, same thing, put it up to a vote in the House, put it up to a vote in the Senate, and have senators and representatives vote against Medicare expansion. That would be a huge blow to any campaign. So we'll have to see what they do when it comes to Medicare expansion. Another thing I want to talk about is lowering prescription drugs. Now, this is something that I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, and these issues that we're talking about here, let's face it, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican. You could benefit. If you're a family, you can benefit from a child tax credit. If you're a person receiving Medicare, you can benefit from Medicare expansion. If you are an individual that's buying prescription drugs, of course you want to buy prescription drugs at a lower price. You don't want to have to pay a lot for prescription drugs. And I talk about this story all the time because I live in Southern California. I live close to the border. And there are a lot of people, a lot of Americans that will travel to Tijuana to buy prescription medication because it's cheaper to buy it there than it is to buy it in the U.S. And that's ridiculous, right? You can go to Mexico and buy prescription medication, the same prescribed medication as you can in the U.S., but it's much cheaper. So that's something that needs to be addressed. Now let's talk a little bit about Social Security, because there are two things that need to happen when it comes to Social Security. One thing is Social Security reform. That needs to happen. And we've heard about this over and over again when it comes to Social Security. They need to reform it. 2034, the trust fund will run out of money, which means that we'll be looking at people, Social Security beneficiaries, they'll have their benefits reduced from 100% down to around 78%. So you're going to lose about 21% of the current benefits that you're receiving now. And so it needs to be addressed. And so this is something that you hear a lot of politicians talk about this all the time, Social Security reform, or at least they talk about it during an election year. And so we'll have to see if they can move forward with anything in 2022, because that definitely needs to happen. Now, another thing that was talked about a couple years ago, Senator Elizabeth Warren during an election year talked about a $200 raise for Social Security. Now, we haven't heard anything since then, so they haven't moved forward with a $200 raise for Social Security. Hopefully, they'll bring this back up. They'll bring this topic back up in 2022, and maybe we can see some movement when it comes to that. So as soon as we hear candidates start to talk about a $200 raise for Social Security or a raise for Social Security, I will make sure to let you know who those people are, because I think it's one of those situations where you had Senator Elizabeth Warren talk about it, you had President Biden talk about it, you had Leader Schumer talk about it as well, but it didn't catch any steam. Okay, you didn't have a large group of politicians coming on board when it came to a $200 raise for Social Security. It was just certain politicians. So when I hear candidates start talking about raise for Social Security and reforming Social Security, those are things that I'm really going to let you guys know about, because being that it is an election year, we have the power to vote some of these people out and vote some of these people in that have our interests at heart. So that's one of the goals this year in 2022. One of my goals is to inform you about all the different politicians that are out there and how they feel about certain things when it comes down to the American people. So that's what I'm going to focus on this year. And so like I always say, make sure you subscribe, hit that little bell notification. That way you'll get notified and you'll know what's going on, because we're going to have a lot of different things, a lot of different moving pieces that will be happening in 2022. Some of the legislation will actually get passed, and some of the legislation will just be talked about. Some will hear these different proposals coming out, and we just need to know what politicians are saying it, and we need to know we want to keep those politicians in office if we think that they're going to move forward with what they're talking about. Okay, so let's get on to some other things that I think we'll hear about in 2022. Cancellation of student loan debt. So we heard this talked about before. You had progressive Democrats really pushing for canceling student loan debt. They wanted to go as high as $50,000. I think President Biden was more comfortable with about $10,000, but nothing has happened as of yet. Okay, the only thing that we heard a couple of days ago, we heard President Biden, he extended the deferment, so he extended it out until May. So that's the only thing that we've heard so far when it's come to student loans and student loan debt. I think this is a real key issue that needs to be addressed in 2022. Now, I was in a situation where I had student loan debt. Now, I paid all my student loan debt off, but it is tough. It is really tough to go to college now because everything is so expensive. And I don't care if you're working full time, you're still probably going to take out loans because it's that expensive. And so we have a lot of people who are going to a 4-year college or going to get a Julius doctorate or going to get a doctorate degree, and they're looking at a situation where they have a lot of debt. As soon as they leave college, they have $100,000 that they owe in debt, and that's just right out of the gate. Okay, usually their two biggest expenses is a car and a house, but now it's a house and student loan debt. Those are your two biggest debts. And so something needs to happen. Something needs to be done. I think schools are they're out of control when it comes to how much they're charging. There should not be a situation where we're going to school and we're paying $30,000 a year to go to a school. I don't care what that school is. You can't be learning that much where $30,000 is appropriate, just in my opinion. Well, that needs to be revamped. That whole system needs to be revamped. And when we start looking at the student loan debt, I think we really need to focus on, okay, there has to be a different way for us to allow people to go to school. And in Build Back Better, they talked about this. They had that 2 years of free community college. They ended up taking that out of the bill, but something needs to happen. I could see maybe having that free college tuition for community college, allow people to do that 2 years for free, and then get into a 4-year college. And that last 2 years of that 4-year college, they will pay a little bit more. But when it comes down to it, we know how a 4-year college goes anyway. You go to a 4-year college, the first 2 years, you're just learning general ed. You're not even focused on your major. And so it's not even necessary to go to that 4-year college at that time. The last 2 years, that's when you're really focusing on your major anyway. And so maybe that's when you should be paying, if you have to pay the big bucks. Pay the big bucks the last 2 years, but that first 2 years, you can go to community college and you can do it for free. So something that I think that we'll hear more about. Now I want to talk about stimulus checks. Now, when it comes to stimulus checks, I really think in 2022, if they were to move forward with stimulus checks, they're going to need to change the name. Okay, no longer stimulus checks. Call it what it is. It's a tax cut. That's what you need to start putting out there, especially during an election year. Everybody wants their taxes cut. Okay, the child tax credit. We heard about that. You had some people who didn't like the child tax credit, but one thing that you didn't hear when they talked about the child tax credit, you didn't hear that it was free money, because everyone understood that it was a tax credit. And so with the stimulus checks, you heard people talking about stimulus checks as free money, even though the stimulus checks and the child tax credit, they're the same thing. The stimulus checks, that was a tax credit. It was a tax credit that they advanced to you early. That's all it was. Okay. The same thing that the child tax credit is. It was money that's advanced to you early. And so what I think they need to do is stop calling them stimulus checks and start calling them a tax credit. And this tax credit, we're going to advance to you early, or we'll give you an option. If you want that option to have it advanced to you early, you can. If you don't want that option, that's fine. You don't have to have it advanced to you early. You can just file your taxes in 2020, will be for 2022. So in 2023, you file your taxes for 2022, and guess what? You'll get that tax credit. So that's what they need to do when it comes to stimulus checks. Stop calling them stimulus checks, start calling them tax cuts. And that during an election year, you are not going to have a politician come against a tax cut. You will not have a politician say that they're against a tax cut. You put that on the floor, and I guarantee you're going to have a lot more support than what you think. So we'll have to see if they do that, but that's something that I think needs to happen when it comes to stimulus checks. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think they should change the branding of this? Okay, no longer stimulus check, actually call it what it is, a tax cut. And let me know what you guys think about all the different topics that I talked about down below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.